Marcus Johnson was 8 years old when his family almost lost everything. His father had left. His mother was working 2 jobs and still couldn't make rent. Marcus went to school hungry, wore shoes with holes, didn't have a winter coat. He was 8 years old, and he knew his family was drowning. Then the envelopes started appearing. Cash at their door, no name, no note, just enough to survive another month. Rent money when they were about to be evicted. Grocery money when the fridge was empty. A coat for Marcus, shoes for his sister, school supplies. In September, Marcus' mother called him Miracle, called whoever was leaving those envelopes their angel. For years, the envelopes kept coming. Through Marcus' childhood, through high school, whenever things got desperate, help would appear. Anonymous, unexplained. Marcus grew up believing in angels. Real ones, ones who didn't want credit, just wanted to help. When Marcus was 25, he discovered the truth. Their angel wasn't a church, wasn't charity, was a 68-year-old retired teacher named Dorothy Williams. Marcus's 3rd grade teacher, Miss Williams, the woman who taught him to read, had been spending her pension on his family, on dozens of families for years, living in a tiny apartment with almost nothing, giving away everything she had without ever telling anyone. Marcus sat with that knowledge and cried, because Dorothy Williams had saved his family, had probably saved his life, and she'd never wanted him to know. But Marcus decided the world needed to know anyway. So he wrote a letter to Johnny Carson, not asking for money for Dorothy. Dorothy would never accept it, asking for something else, asking for America to see what quiet heroism looks like, what love without recognition looks like, what a teacher's heart can do when nobody's watching. Johnny read that letter, and for one of the few times in his career, he cried before the cameras ever started rolling. Dorothy Williams started teaching in 1943. She was 21 years old, fresh out of teacher's college, assigned to Lincoln Elementary in Baltimore. 3rd grade. She'd stay in that same classroom for 42 years. Same school, same grade. Generation after generation of 8-year-olds passing through her door. Dorothy never married, never had children of her own. Her students were her children, thousands of them over 4 decades. She remembered their names, all of them, could tell you who sat in which seat, who struggled with reading, who needed extra help with math, who came to school hungry, who wore the same clothes every day. Dorothy noticed everything, and Dorothy did something about what she noticed. It started small. A pencil here, an eraser there, lunch money for a child who'd forgotten theirs. Nobody thought much of it. Teachers often help students. That's what teachers did. But Dorothy's help went further than anyone knew. When she noticed a child didn't have a winter coat, a coat would appear in the lost and found it happened to be the right size. When she noticed shoes with holes, new shoes would show up in a child's cupboard with a note saying, "Wrong size for my nephew. Maybe they'll fit you." When families face eviction, anonymous envelopes would arrive with just enough cash to survive another month. Dorothy never took credit, never told anyone, never wanted recognition. She just saw a need and met it quietly, consistently for 42 years. Dorothy's salary was modest. Teachers didn't make much, especially women teachers in the 40s and 50s and 60s. But Dorothy lived simply. Small apartment, no car, no vacations, no luxuries. She saved everything she could and gave away everything she saved. By the time Dorothy retired in 1985, she'd helped hundreds of families, maybe thousands. Nobody knew the real number because Dorothy never kept track, never wanted to quantify love, just wanted to help whoever needed it. When Dorothy retired at 68, her colleagues threw her a small party, cake in the teacher's lounge, a card signed by everyone. The principal said some nice words about her dedication. Dorothy smiled, thanked everyone, and went home to her tiny apartment. She should have been done, should have rested, should have enjoyed her pension after 42 years of service. But Dorothy couldn't stop because the children at Lincoln Elementary still needed help, still came to school hungry, still wore shoes with holes, still had families facing eviction. Dorothy's former colleagues would mention struggling families in passing, not asking for help, just conversation. Dorothy would listen, remember? And soon, anonymous envelopes would appear at those families' doors. Dorothy's pension wasn't large, about $1,200 a month. Enough to live on if you were careful. Dorothy wasn't careful with money. She was generous with it. Every month, she'd take $800 in cash, divide it into envelopes, and deliver them herself. No names on the envelopes, no return address, just cash and maybe a small note saying for the children. Dorothy kept $400 for herself, rent for her tiny apartment, utilities, rice and beans, the basics, nothing more. She wore the same coat she'd had for 15 years, ate the same simple meals every day, gave away 2/3 of everything she had, because somewhere a child needed a coat more than Dorothy needed comfort. Marcus Johnson was one of those children. His family received envelopes for years. His mother never knew where they came from, just called them blessings. Called whoever sent them their guardian angel. Marcus grew up assuming it was some organization, some church program, some charity that helped families in need. It never occurred to him that one person could do so much, could give so consistently, could care so deeply about strangers. After high school, Marcus worked his way through community college, got a job at a bank, started building a life. He never forgot the envelopes, never forgot being saved, always wanted to find out who'd helped his family and thank them. When Marcus was 25, his mother got sick. He went home to help. While sorting through old papers, Marcus found the envelopes his mother had saved. Dozens of them, all the same paper, same handwriting on the notes. He studied them closely for the first time. The handwriting looked familiar. Where had he seen it? Then it hit him. His third-grade report cards. Miss Williams. The handwriting was Miss Williams's handwriting. Marcus couldn't believe it. His third-grade teacher, the quiet woman who taught him to read. She was the angel. Marcus did some research. Found out Dorothy Williams had retired in 1985 and still lived in Baltimore. Found her address. A tiny apartment building in a modest neighborhood. Marcus drove there, not sure what he'd find, not sure what he'd say. He found a 68-year-old woman living in a 300 QFT apartment with almost nothing. A bed, a chair, a small table, a few books, no television, no decorations, almost no furniture. Dorothy looked surprised to see him. Then her face softened. Marcus Johnson, third grade, 1971. Second row, third seat. You struggle with reading, but you worked so hard. She remembered him after all those years, after thousands of students. She remembered exactly where he sat. Marcus couldn't speak at first, just stood in her doorway looking at this woman who'd saved his family, who lived with nothing so others could have something who'd never wanted anyone to know. Finally, he asked the only question that mattered. Why? Dorothy invited him in, made him tea with the one cup she had, and explained. When I started teaching, I saw children who had nothing, children who came to school hungry, children who couldn't learn because they were worried about where they'd sleep that night. I couldn't teach them fractions if they were scared about survival. So I helped however I could with whatever I had. Marcus asked why she never told anyone. Dorothy's answer was simple. Help isn't help if it's about you. Those families didn't need to feel grateful. They needed to feel safe. If they knew it was me, they'd feel obligated, embarrassed. I didn't want that. I just wanted them to know someone cared. That help could come from nowhere, like magic, like grace. Marcus left Dorothy's apartment changed. He couldn't stop thinking about this woman. This teacher who'd spent her entire life giving, who'd never married because her students were her family, who'd never bought herself anything nice because that money could buy a child a coat, who lived in poverty by choice so others could survive. Marcus felt a responsibility. Dorothy would never ask for recognition, would be embarrassed by attention, but the world needed to know people like her existed, needed to see what quiet heroism looked like. So Marcus wrote a letter to the one person he thought might understand, Johnny Carson. The letter arrived at the Tonight Show in March 1988. Marcus explained everything. The envelopes, the discovery, Dorothy's tiny apartment, her 42 years of secret giving, the handwriting that had finally revealed the truth. Marcus didn't ask for money. Dorothy wouldn't want that. He asked for something else. Mr. Carson Dorothy Williams will never ask for recognition. She'd be mortified by this letter, but I believe the world needs to see what a real hero looks like. Not someone who saves lives dramatically. Someone who saves lives quietly with envelopes and coats and school supplies and love. Can you help me show America that heroes don't always wear capes? Sometimes they grade papers. Johnny's assistant read the letter first, cried, brought it to Johnny. He read it, sat quietly for a long time, then said one word. Yes. The Tonight Show tracked down Dorothy Williams. The producers called her, explained that a former student wanted to honor her on the show. Dorothy refused, said she hadn't done anything special, said there were teachers everywhere doing the same thing, said she didn't want attention. The producers called back and back and back. Finally, they put Marcus on the phone. He told Dorothy what she'd meant to his family, what she'd meant to him, how she'd saved them. Dorothy cried for the first time Marcus had ever heard, and finally, reluctantly agreed to appear. Not for herself, for Marcus, because he'd asked. Dorothy Williams walked onto the Tonight Show stage in April 1988. She was 68 years old, wearing the same dress she'd worn to her retirement party 3 years earlier, her only nice dress. Johnny stood to greet her, took her hand gently, guided her to the seat. The audience didn't know her story yet, just saw a small elderly woman who looked nervous. Johnny started simply. Dorothy, you were a teacher for 42 years. Same school, same grade. Why? Dorothy smiled. I love third grade. That's when children really learn to read, when the world opens up to them. I got to watch that happen thousands of times. There's nothing better. Johnny nodded. Then his tone shifted. Dorothy, there's someone here who wants to thank you for something. Marcus walked out from backstage. Dorothy's face changed. She understood, knew what was coming, and looked like she wanted to disappear. Marcus sat down next to her, took her hand, and told the story, the envelopes, the years of anonymous help, the discovery, the tiny apartment, the pension given away. Dorothy sat very still, tears streaming down her face, not from pride, from embarrassment she never wanted anyone to know. Marcus finished by looking at Dorothy. Miss Williams, you taught me to read, but you also taught me something more important. You taught me that help doesn't need credit, that love doesn't need recognition, that one person giving quietly can change everything. You changed my life, you changed my family's life, and you never wanted us to know. The audience was weeping. Johnny was weeping. Dorothy was weeping. When Marcus finished, Johnny spoke directly to Dorothy. How many families did you help over 42 years? Dorothy shook her head. I don't know. I never counted. Why not? Dorothy's answer was quiet. Counting would make it about numbers. It wasn't about numbers. It was about children, each one at a time. Johnny asked about the tiny apartment, the pension given away, the life of nothing so others could have something. Dorothy looked almost confused by the question. What else would I do with money? I don't need much. I have books. I have memories of my students. I have enough. Johnny leaned forward. Dorothy, you've been giving away almost everything you have for decades. Living in poverty, wearing the same clothes, eating rice and beans so children you'd never meet could have coats. Don't you think you deserve something for yourself? Dorothy's answer silenced the studio. Mr. Carson, I got to be a teacher. I got to watch children learn to read. I got to see them grow up and become good people. I got to help when they needed it. I got everything I ever wanted. Those children didn't owe me anything. I owed them for letting me be their teacher. The audience gave Dorothy a standing ovation. Not the usual Tonight Show applause. Something deeper. Recognition of. A kind of heroism most people never see. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't want applause. The kind that just wants to help. After the show aired, the response was overwhelming. People sent donations to Lincoln Elementary School in Dorothy's name. A scholarship fund was created for students from low-income families. Dorothy's story was covered by newspapers across the country. She received thousands of letters from former students who finally understood where those anonymous gifts had come from. Dorothy was uncomfortable with all of it, didn't understand why people were making such a fuss, tried to refuse the donations. The school convinced her to let the scholarship fund exist. Not for her, for future children who needed help. Dorothy agreed because it was for children, That was the only argument that ever worked with Dorothy Williams. If it helped children, she was in. Dorothy Williams continued living in her tiny apartment until she died in 1996 at age 79. She never changed her lifestyle, still gave away most of her money, still wore the same clothes, still ate rice and beans. But she did accept one thing, a photograph. A photograph of Marcus Johnson's family taken at his wedding in 1990. Marcus's mother, his sister, his wife, his new baby, all the people Dorothy's envelopes had helped survive, all the life that existed because one teacher gave everything she had. Dorothy kept that photograph by her bed, the only decoration in her tiny apartment, the only evidence that any of it had happened. The story of Dorothy Williams isn't about one extraordinary person. It's about what ordinary love can do when practiced consistently. Dorothy wasn't rich, wasn't powerful, wasn't famous. She was a third-grade teacher who noticed the children needed help and spent her entire life providing it without recognition, without credit, without expecting anything in return. That's not just teaching. That's love, pure and simple. The kind that gives without counting. The kind that helps without asking. The kind that changes everything without wanting anyone to know. If Dorothy Williams taught us anything, it's that heroism doesn't require audiences, doesn't require applause, doesn't require anyone knowing your name. Sometimes heroism is just showing up day after day, year after year with envelopes and coats and school supplies and love. Dorothy was Marcus's angel. And now, thanks to one letter and one television host who understood what mattered, Dorothy is ours, too. Subscribe for more stories about quiet heroism. Share with a teacher who changed your life. Comment below. Who was your angel? Who helped you when nobody was watching? Because somewhere right now, another Dorothy Williams is giving away her pension. Another teacher is buying coats for children. Another angel is leaving envelopes at doors. And they don't want you to know their name. They just want you to survive. That's what love looks like. Not loud, not proud,